everybody, this is Susan with Susan Monroe Art, and today I'm going to show you how I made this cute little painting in an Altoids tin. I call them pocket paintings, and they're really fun just to have around with you. Something cute and small and a piece of art that's sort of portable. So let me show you how I did it. First, of course, I got an Altoids tin. I just pretty much wiped it out with a damp paper towel. Didn't do anything else fancy to it. I took a piece of 140 pound, this is hot pressed watercolor paper, but you could use whatever watercolor paper you want, and then just got some of my packing tape and taped it in because I was feeling a little lazy. I didn't want to go heat up the glue gun and glue it in or anything like that. And the tapes worked fine. The painting has stayed in the lid. Maybe if I were making this for somebody besides myself, I'd put it in with something a little stronger, but this was good to go. And then for my paints, I just used my inexpensive set of gouache paints that I got from Michael's. Gouache is a type of opaque watercolor that I've been playing around with, but you could always use watercolor as well if you want just traditional watercolors. And I put the paints right in the bottom of the tin because that's part of the charm of these little Altoid tin paintings or pocket paintings, is that you have the remnants of your palette just left in the bottom of the tin. So it's really cool. You have the painting and then you have the materials you use to make it right in the bottom, and that can be almost like a little abstract piece of art in the bottom part of the tin once you've mixed all the colors up. And the bottom of the tin worked great for a palette. The fact that it was silver colored didn't bother me at all. I was able to mix the colors without any problem, and now that it's dried, the colors haven't flaked off or anything. They seem to be in there pretty solid. I guess if they were flaking off or something, you could spray a little fixative on there to keep the leftover paint from your palette in the bottom, but it wasn't a problem for me. So here I am. Let's just go through. I'm putting on a bunch of blues, a little yellow ochre, because the photograph I was working from was clouds, and I knew those were the main colors I was going to need. Now let me show you the reference photos I was working from. These are some pictures that I took from the car on the way home from my son's graduation the other day. I just thought the clouds were beautiful with the contrails and all. So you can see what I had in mind when I started working. So here my palette is all set up and I'm ready to start painting. So I used 3 main brushes. I used 2 small flat brushes, a number 4 and a number 6, and then I also used a very small round brush. It was a 2/0 brush. I think the flat brushes were Princeton brushes, and the round brush was just a Dick Blick student's brush. Really, I didn't go fancy with anything in this painting. They were old brushes that I had, and I'm just working with trying to play around with the texture of these gouache paints here. Gouache is, to me, it was almost like a cross between acrylic and traditional watercolor in that it was thick and could be almost like a paste if you really put it on there directly without diluting it, or you could put a lot of water in and dilute it a lot and would become transparent like a watercolor. I found I sort of needed to do a happy medium. I needed to add more water generally than I did. And so, like I said, though, I'm learning as I go along, and a little painting like this is a great opportunity to learn. You're not stressed having to cover up a big piece of paper. You know, you're working small and it's limited. So I always feel freer to experiment when I'm working on something small like this. Now the colors I'm using are just a plain white, a titanium white, and then it was a little iridescent blue, a sort of metallic blue that came in the set. I liked it because it gave a little shine to the sky, and I thought that was really pretty. Now I'm just trying to put a little variation in the color in the sky. I don't want it to look just flat blue. And there were areas of the sky that were just a touch darker than others because of the way the sun was coming out behind the clouds and striking little misty areas in the sky. So I was showing that, and here I'm mixing up my green. I used a yellow ochre mixed with marine blue and Prussian blue to get this color. And I wanted to make a dark green that looked like a green in shadow. This is sort of the side, the berm of the highway, the edge of the highway. But nobody has to know that in the painting unless I tell them that it's a highway. It just looks like a pretty green field this way. So I made a nice, cool, but dark green. And I end up darkening this some more a little bit later just because I wanted the contrast. And I just want to take a minute here to say, number one, thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it. I know there are a lot of art videos out there, and it means a lot to me that you chose mine. Also, if you like this video, please take a second to click the thumbs up button underneath the video. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and makes my videos get seen by more people. And you could even subscribe to my channel if you want to see more painting videos, particularly watercolor. And if you click the bell icon, you'll be notified every time I put out a new one. Okay? And now comes the fun part. I could finally start working on the clouds. And I wanted to show how behind the clouds there were these rays of light coming out. And we always call them God's fingers. It's, you know, the rays that shoot out behind clouds. Sometimes they come down toward the earth. These were going up toward the sky, and they were just really beautiful. They sort of made the scene. And then I wanted to work on the contrails that cut across as well. So that is where I started. I guess these are the parts that were the furthest away in the painting. I like to work frequently starting from the objects that are furthest away to the things that are closer to me. For some reason, that just makes sense in my brain. I'm sure other people work differently, but I think it's just easier to put things in the foreground over top of things in the background, especially if you're working with a paint that's more opaque, like gouache can be. And you know, the fact that gouache can be opaque when it's thicker really was something fun to play with in this painting, because if I were painting this in traditional watercolors, everywhere that is white, I would have to leave paint off the paper. In traditional watercolors, white is the white of the paper. There is no white paint. You have to preserve the white of the paper anywhere you want to see white. So it requires a lot of planning ahead of time and using things like masking fluid or just being careful and painting around objects. But with this gouache, I had the fun of just being able to put the white on over top of the blue, and I really enjoyed doing that. It was sort of something different for me, and I was able to, you know, make it thinner or thicker depending on how much of that contrail I wanted to show. And then it was even more fun to use in the clouds like that. But it was a little more difficult, I think, for me to control just because I'm used to transparent watercolor. But I really loved giving it a try in this painting. And now onto those big thunderhead clouds. I put in their shapes just in white. And I knew white was going to be peeking out, sort of the silver lining on each cloud would be the white paint. So I'm just shaping them up with white. And then I thought I would go over and put the darker paints on top of this white to show the shadow areas. I'm using that flat brush for these bigger, just laying in bigger places where I'm laying in an area of color. You know, clouds are great to paint. They're very forgiving. Nobody's going to come in behind you and say, oh, you know, you really messed up on that cloud. You missed a spot over there. Because, I mean, they're clouds. They're just fluffy and beautiful, and they float around up in the sky. And if you add an extra bump on it or take a bump away, hey, it's all good. It's all good. They're going to look great no matter what. It's just really getting the light and shadow correct in it, and just remembering clouds cast shadows just like anything else. And I think they cast beautiful shadows. There's not just gray in them, but there can be yellows and occasionally a little pink or red. So yeah, so here I am just working in those big thunderheads. So once I began starting to put in the shadows, I really needed to keep referring to my reference photo because parts of the cloud were overlapping, other part there was a lot of light and dark contrast, and I wanted to reflect that in the painting. And I wanted to also make sure I left, like I said, that little silver lining, that white rim around the edge of each cloud. And the sun was setting right behind this section of cloud. That's why it has a little more yellow in it. Although I do think yellow ochre in cloud shadows is really pretty. Now, part of me wishes that I had really just sort of stopped right here with my painting. I kept wanting to be super faithful to the reference photo. So instead of just thinking, hey, I really like how that looks and stopping there, I continued to darken it because the clouds in the reference photo were really dark. But I really like this look here a lot. It shows a lot more of the yellow. And if you look at this and then compare it to the end video, I'm sure you'll see what I mean. But like I said, I did what I did. I was experimenting. I was playing with it. It doesn't look bad with the clouds dark. I just wish I'd considered leaving it this way. But live and learn. Maybe next time I'll pull back a little sooner. I think that's a problem a lot of artists face. You just tend to overwork stuff occasionally. And I believe that's a little bit of what I did in this piece. And you can see here I've moved to my very tiny round brush. I'm using that to put in some details and especially to bring out the white edge on the clouds. So now we're in the area where I think I really start getting a little crazy with my darks on this cloud on the left. Like I said, I wanted to be real faithful to the reference photo, and the parts of this cloud on the left that sort of trailed by the cloud on the right made for a nice contrast. I don't think it's bad. I just liked it the way it was before as well. Also, that darkness made a nice contrast here where the sunset portion of the cloud was showing. And I wanted to add in some nice whites to really emphasize that that's where the sun was. So I hope you can tell that in the painting. And now I'm putting in the silhouettes of the trees that were on the edge of the road, on the top of the hill by the highway. I just used sort of tree-like shapes. I didn't get detailed with them. I did want to make sure that they went all the way down to the hill and not leave any sky color under them, so they look like they were floating in the air. And once those dark tree colors were in there, I realized that I really needed to darken up the foreground to balance out the piece. The fact that that cloud in the back was so dark meant that the foreground needed to be even darker, so it just would even out the painting. So here I'm using a little of that Prussian blue. I'm using even a little bit of black to just really darken that area up. And here's the finished painting. I hope you enjoyed watching me paint it. I just want to say thank you for watching through to the end of this video. If you like this video, I hope you'll like it, and you will subscribe to my channel and then click the bell icon so you'll know when I put out more videos. Thanks again so much for watching, and take care.